Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of SteerBridge Insights. Today, we're going to dive into the topics of AI-driven recruiting and contested logistics. On today's episode, we'll sit down with Bill Gray, one of the managing directors at SteerBridge. Bill, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Chris.
Awesome. If you could, please introduce yourself a little bit and what your role is at SteerBridge.
All right, Chris. Well, you said, as you mentioned, I'm a managing director here at SteerBridge with a focus on global sustainment and military recruiting. And so I retired about a year ago after 29 years in the Marine Corps as an aviation logistics officer, and about a third of my time in the Marine Corps was in recruiting.
Awesome. When you say a third of your time was in recruiting, right, can you expound on that? Like, what does that experience look like?
So Marine Corps is structured a little bit differently in the military recruiting field. So first tours are usually captains or majors serving in the roles of executive officer or operations officer at a recruiting station. And there's 48 recruiting stations nationwide within 6 districts within 2 regions. Okay. And so my first tour in the duty was as a major, as a recruiting station commanding officer. That was a 3-year tour.
Where was that at?
It was in Fort Worth, Texas.
Fort Worth, Texas. Awesome. And then, so you'd had to come back again for at least a second tour.
That's right. So in the Marine Corps, you have a little saying that you get the stink on, you can't wash it off. And so those that are successful during the first tour of recruiting are often pulled back. So my first tour as a colonel, I was the G3 or the Assistant Chief of Staff for Operations for Marine Corps Recruiting Command down at Quantico.
Okay. And then, so you did good. So a third of it. So there's got to be another tour in there somewhere, Bill.
So my Colonel Command was of the 6th Marine Corps District. So I mentioned that there's 6 districts nationwide. So 1/6 the entire Marine Corps mission for officer enlisted was within my bailiwick down at 6th Marine Corps District, and that's in the southeast, including Puerto Rico.
Okay. So to kind of summarize your experience, you started out as a recruiting station commanding officer. So you're at the tactical level as a major, leading Marine recruiters and a command there, and then went back to the operating forces, and then came back at the national level as the G3 for Marine Corps Recruiting Command. From there, selected to a district where you're now as a district commander. You're overseeing 8 recruiting station majors that are running those commands, and then all of those Marines and all that goes.
So about 650 Marines total.
Wow. So yes, that does qualify you to say you have experience in military recruiting for the Marine Corps for sure. In terms of logistics, you mentioned that you were aviation officer there. What experience do you have in logistics?
Grew up from lieutenant all the way through lieutenant colonel. So I've been at the squadron level. I deployed with 2 different squadrons, actually flying squadrons during my time as the Marine Aviation Logistics Squadron Detachment Officer in Charge. So did that as a youngster, went on the USS Wasp with a, back then, 46 Squadron composite squadron. We had AVAB Harriers, 6 jets, a whole complement of different helicopters that attached to that squadron. So we did a med cruise, supported Bosnia operations. Fast forward after 9/11, as a captain, I went out with an F-18 squadron, supporting the initial operations in Afghanistan. I grew up through the ranks, commanded Marine Aviation Logistics Squadron 31, so about 100 Marines supporting mainly F-18s, but also F-35. The first squadron in the Marine Corps of F-35s, and then from there went to the national level where I was the deputy head of, back then, ASL, which is now shifted to Aviation Support Branch at Headquarters Marine Corps.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Our first topic today is exploring the complex world of innovative recruiting, right? The strategies around, how do we inject artificial intelligence into the recruiting process, right? Can you give us a brief overview of how AI and recruiting are interconnected or can be?
Sure. So recruiting, whether it's in the civilian market, in the military market, is very recruiter intensive, very labor intensive, time consuming. And it's usually one recruiter going after a name. If they have a name in the military recruiting world, it's high school list. So a name, a phone number, and they're told to get after this list, make contact with all these kids that are supposedly in their high schools, and then try to get them in an office, do a kneecap to kneecap interview, and tell them about the benefits of the Marine Corps. Time intensive. Recruiters will spend days, if not weeks, researching names and trying to figure out, okay, the phone number that I have is mom and dad's. I'm tired of calling mom and being told that Johnny's not interested. I go to the high school at lunch and
I'll be there.
Hundreds of kids in some high schools and trying to figure out which one is Johnny that I'm looking for. Doing things like, okay, where do I see on Facebook? Can I find him there? And what I saw after COVID especially is a pivot from trying to go to high schools or make phone calls to an online presence.
Yeah.
The world was shut down. We were doing virtual calls and so forth. And so recruiters would take that name and go to all the different social media sites, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, you have it, and do a search for that name and see if there's a presence there. They go to the high school Instagram page and look at, okay, what's the latest news? There's pictures of the last football game. Okay, who was that young athletic high school senior that caught the game-winning touchdown? Okay, you got a name, you got a connection. All right, is that individual on Instagram? And they would end up direct messaging them. And I saw that was relatively successful. And so how does AI come into that? We can automate all that. So instead of having one recruiter with one name going to all these different sites at a time, why not let the machine help us do that work? So put in the name, let the machine search at machine speed, not only just one name, the entire list, and come back with, okay, here's where you can find this individual. Here's the attributes that the service can put in the tool. I'm looking for athletes. I'm looking for smart people, dean's lists, honor rolls, things like that. And then not that you would disqualify them, but how about put some criteria in that would maybe put them at the bottom of the pile and I'll deal with them when I have time. So arrest reports, screening for things like tattoos that may be disqualifying, and so forth. So AI can help with a lot of that.
Thank you for that. So to make sure I captured all that, there's a saying out there that you can't buy time or happiness. And it sounds like with AI, I can buy both, right? Because if I can take a list of 100 names and run that through the machine and it enrich that list and give me data that I didn't have, insights that I didn't have, and give me contact methods to target them without having to do all that labor-intensive research, not only have I bought time, you bought my happiness because I don't have to do all that. Would you say that a company that leverages technology to do exactly what you just described, does that put them in a better position to excel, outpace their competitors?
Absolutely. So it's twofold. So if you're going to apply this technology in the business world, first of all, you have to have the company that knows how to do this. And that's what SteerBridge is about. Our data scientists, training models, and so forth. But a company out in the civilian world, in the corporate realm, is only as good as its people. Just like the Marine Corps. Marine Corps is only as good as the Marines, and we're very selective about who we brought into the Marine Corps. Company is only as good as the people that they bring in. So if you can enhance that and do better searches and throw the net out there and only bring in the big fish, then that's what you want to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for that. I was just listening to a podcast even on the way in today talking about AI and how it's been around for a handful of years, or at least accelerated in the last few years. And there are still people inside government and even the commercial sector that doesn't fully understand what it is, or they're in denial that it's coming, right? Some believe AI in recruiting could lead to bias or job loss. What's your perspective on this issue?
Well, you're talking about
or view
about the military, right?
Yeah, specific to military.
So I would tell you that there's not a recruiter out there that would say reducing the number of recruiters because somebody else is doing that work is not a bad thing, right? And quite frankly, it would be a benefit to the Marine Corps and all the services if they could get better results with the less recruiting force, because a lot of civilians don't realize that you're capped by law the number of people you can have in any military branch. So that's a number. You can only deviate plus or minus about 2% at the end of the year, and it's zero sum. So if you want to make more infantry battalions, for example, and you can do the recruiting mission with less recruiters, that's more infantry Marines you could make. So job loss in the world of recruiting because you have a smart tool that makes it more effective and efficient is not a bad thing. Now, bias, on the other hand, I would argue that if you build the filters correctly, you can eliminate bias. So instead of somebody that may have a particular bias for whatever it is, you name it, if you train the tool properly and say, okay, I'm looking for athletes. I don't care what color their skin is. I want to know, okay, are they athletic? Because in most of the military services, you have to be in good shape to perform the mission. Or I'm looking for very smart people. I don't care what they look like. If they're male, female, it doesn't matter. I just want the smart people, and one indication may be honoring. So that removes a bias. It's looking for an objective characteristic that you can quantify.
So based off what you said there, one, it removes unconscious bias that humans tend to have if you write the model properly.
Yep.
And then validate that model. But you can also target the right demographics that you're actually looking for to fill a capability. If I'm looking to staff an infantry battalion, then I may be looking for not only smart but athletic. If I'm looking to fill my UAS operators, my unmanned aerial operators, I may not need physical fitness over smarts or intelligence or judgment, et cetera. And you can train those models to go out and find those and let the machine do the hard lift or the heavy lifting.
That's right. And well, I still say we, I retired, but the military discriminates. It just does based on the qualifications required. And discrimination is not necessarily a dirty word, but you have to be physically qualified to join the military. You have to be morally qualified to join the military in terms of arrest reports and a good criminal record or lack of, I guess. And then morally, mentally, and physically. So mentally, you have to pass a test, the ASVAB, in order to serve in the military. So if you can have AI search for those potential disqualifications, it's going to save the recruiter time. And so police report's a good example. They will list by name on a police report those that have been arrested for whatever the reason, if you're 18 or above. And so if you have a high school senior who's 18 that was arrested for a felony, if you name it, all right, the recruiter probably want to know that, and it would save them time instead of, spending a lot of time trying to sell this individual and join the military just to find out that, you know what, you're not qualified because you have arrest on your record.
Right. No, that's good. Not only for targeting specific, athletes and those that have the intellect or the military affiliation, right? The propensity potentially there. You're looking for moral discriminators as well. Things that you might not otherwise have if you're not talking to the person and they're revealing that to you, or it pops up on a police check, which is hard to run on someone that you don't even know exists yet, right?
Right. And the tool we're building, we're not going to let the tool make the decision. There's always going to be a human in the loop, but it will prioritize and categorize and rank those leads so that, there's a picture of a person with what looks like a tattoo up their face. All right. It's not the tool's decision to determine if that's qualified or not, because they could have just gone to a carnival and got face paint.
Right. Yeah, I had not thought about that. Okay. Let me ask this. Why is it essential for businesses to stay updated on AI, and how can they incorporate AI into their recruiting process?
So for business, AI touches all manner of things now. It saves time, but it doesn't necessarily supplant the human intelligence and creativity that a successful company needs. So you can save time in mundane tasks across all types of work with AI. When it comes to recruiting, the applicability for the civilian world is exactly the same for the military. Companies only as good as its people. There's a saying at SteerBridge, the most important decision this company makes is who we allow to join the team. And that's part of our success. Most talented group of people I've ever been around, and plus almost 30 years in the Marine Corps, that talent resides here. And it's not just old retired guys, it's young, highly technical people. And so if a recruiting force, we have a recruiting team here, if we can save them time and search for most qualified individuals out there, that's an advantage in the market.
Interesting. So if there is a company that is considering, right, leveraging an AI tool to help them, what considerations are there if you're going to integrate that to ensure fairness and efficiency across the board?
Be the same thing. Plug in the objective, non-biased characteristics you're looking for, and machine doesn't view bias. Just spits out what you're looking for, and go to town from there.
All right, thank you. So based on your previous recruiting experience, right, you were able to take that domain expertise, pair that up with some technical capabilities that you've learned here at SteerBridge, and come up with a solution that could help accelerate the recruiting process, right? What experience do you have with AI? Is there anything that you've done at SteerBridge that uses AI to solve a problem that was the aha moment for you for recruiting?
Sure. So what got this project off the ground was I saw a gap, especially when my recruiters shifted to a different mode of prospecting during COVID. Very time intensive, and it just occurred to me that we can automate all that and let the machine do a lot of that research for them, make them more efficient, more effective. And so when I got here, I was doing sustainment work on the F-35, and I saw what the data team was doing with AI and helping them solve supply pack up and sustainment issues. And it's the same kind of technology. Train the model, let the model do the work, and spit the output out. And so, marries up very nicely. We can use the same basic technology, tweak it for this process, and let it go to town.
Awesome. Thank you for that. All right. So we've covered the AI and recruiting, right? The integration on how that can help solve that. We're going to shift to the next topic, right? And for anyone who's keeping up with military-related news right now, we hear the term contested logistics mentioned in the news by the services, the DoD service chiefs, almost daily, right? What are your thoughts on that?
For the last 25 years, the United States has been in a pretty uncontested environment in Afghanistan and Iraq. We own the air supremacy. So yes, convoys were being hit by IEDs, but if you wanted to resupply Marines, it wasn't the vast distances in the Pacific Ocean. It was two countries. We own the air, and we could operate that way. Shifting, we left those two countries, got out of those wars, and now looking at the rise of near-peer competitors, specifically in the Pacific, we have to rethink things. So the distances involved, our forefathers handled that with World War II, but it was a challenge because we were using external lines of communication. They weren't internal. The vast distances, how do you resupply, whether it's Marines, soldiers, sailors on remote islands, how do you get them food, ammunition, so forth? The thing now is new technology, sensors and weapons, and how do you operate within the West, the weapon engagement zone. So the reach that our adversaries have and the ability to detect and the standoff with precision is a concern. So if we get into a scrap with a near-peer competitor, how do you operate with those external lines in a much more contested way and stay alive? So some of the work we're doing, we're about to kick off a study and help Marine Forces Pacific come up with some of those solutions. And the two areas we're focused on is survivability. So how do you send a resupply vehicle, whether it's aviation, surface, subsurface, and make it survivable, not be detected? And if it is detected, how do you keep it from, getting killed? And then on the front end of that, planning and predictive sustainment requirements generation.
Okay, so back to using AI on the front end to determine what requirements you may have, and then developing the vehicle, the survivability piece to get them those needed logistics. Is that basically the two problems you're trying to solve, or SteerBridge is trying to solve?
AI has a much larger ability on the front end on the requirements generation.
Yep.
If we apply the same technology we're using for F-35 now and understand exactly what the equipment needs, for example, we can pare down the logistics footprint and just push forward those parts that fail, as opposed to just having everything plus the kitchen sink in the pack up just in case. And then on the survivability piece, I firmly believe that you counter new technology. One way to counter new technology is with other technology. People will outsmart technology, and tactics, techniques, and procedures will be able to counter some of the effects of enemy weapon systems. But doing some of that research, figuring out what technology is out there or what's being developed that can counter enemy sensors and counter enemy weapon systems will help certainly with the survivability piece.
Well, I tell you, the American people should be thrilled that SteerBridge is help solve those two pieces of the contested logistics. We're on two. How many are there in the rack and stack numeric values for descriptors in terms of contested logistics?
There's multiple swim lanes, if you will, or silos.
Right.
There's maintenance, there's supply in general, there's transportation, there's medical. How do you get somebody that's wounded back to a Role 1 facility? And you've heard of the golden hour, right?
Yep.
Iraq, Afghanistan. You can get somebody that's severely wounded back to a Role 1 facility within an hour. Their chances of survival go up X-fold.
Right.
We're going to have to rethink that. We, the United States, in the distances involved in the Pacific. So I'm not a medical professional, but I got to imagine that pushing some of that capability forward as opposed to being centralized at a Role 1. All right, surgeons on the front end or greatly expanded knowledge base of corpsmen.
Right.
Things like that are things that we have to think through.
Right. Well, I'm glad that SteerBridge and others are working through that problem. You painted a really good picture for us to understand, how important contested logistics is for military operations, the vast distances, the precision fires, the sensors that are now available, et cetera. How does contested logistics impact the corporate business world?
Twofold. For starters, some of those technologies that we discovered will have direct applicability in the civilian world. So you've seen some of these businesses out there, Amazon, for example, sending out unmanned delivery vehicles, autonomous delivery vans. That has applicability in the civilian market. And then the second piece is industry is going to have to help solve the problem, come up with these solutions. So there's going to be a demand for the innovation that industry brings to provide those material solutions.
All right. Thank you, Bill. It's been great talking to you about these two topics, right? What are some key takeaways you'd hope our audience remembers about contested logistics?
Contested logistics is something we all have to worry about. It's how the United States is going to win the next battle if and when it comes. As I just mentioned, the corporate world has a place in providing some of those solutions and coming up with that innovation. And then some of those innovative solutions will have direct applicability to making things better, making products better, and delivering them more effectively and efficiently, and hopefully at a lower cost.
Okay. And same question, but for AI integration into recruiting, right? What are the key takeaways you hope the audience would remember about that?
Using technology, AI in the recruiting world, you can come up with better candidates to fill these roles that companies need. You can do it a lot faster, a lot more efficient, and save the recruiter's time.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your insights on those two topics today, Bill. It's been great sitting down with you, and it's a pleasure to work with you.
All right, man. Thanks.